Monica Seles was close to having the world of tennis under her feet at the age of 19. Just a teenager, she already won 8 Grand Slams and is bound to achieve more. But before she could even reach her 20s, the career of the world's #1 female tennis player was halted by an incident doubted as the greatest tragedy in the world of tennis. Monica Seles was stabbed in the very court she's playing. Born in Yugoslavia in an ethnic Hungarian family, Seles discovered tennis when she was only 5 years old. It happened one morning when her older brother, who was also an athlete, and her cartoonist father, a former athlete as well, decided to pick a tennis racket and play. Seles didn't think of tennis as a competition at first, but rather as a game, a mere play. Soon, she's playing tennis like no other kids. Her father was her first coach. Since he didn't want her to forget the beauty of childhood, as a cartoonist, he decided to draw colorful cartoons on Monica's tennis ball to make the game interesting. The family was living in an apartment, and children were not allowed in the tennis club, so her dad had to create a makeshift court for the young player. It was a net attached to 2 cars in the car park adjacent to their block. There, she would spend most of her time hitting the balls into boxes at the court's corner, a #1 player in the making. At the early age of 11, Monica joined the Junior Orange Bowl and won. It's here that she captured the attention of tennis coach Nick Bollettieri. Following this, she enrolled in Bollettieri's tennis academy in 1986. The enrollment forced her to move to the USA with her brother, despite knowing little English. She was 13, still discovering her identity, but managed to leave her friends and life behind. Nevertheless, the child Monica was so sure of her skills. She knew she was playing better than any other girl. Seles was only 14 when she defeated Chris Evert, who at that time was bound for retirement, in the Houston tournament of May 1986. In the prior years, Monica would watch Evert play on TV and think of him and his opponent as the only tennis player in the world. Who would have thought that she will defeat him? It was certain for Monica at this point that her professional career is taking off. At 16, she was already ranked number 6 at World Tennis Association. Seles was described as someone who would not accept that she couldn't do something. She will spend hours on training until she can perfect her skills. This attitude of the young tennis player will be her asset in dominating the world ranking in the following match. A month after being number 6 in WTA, she defeated world #1 Steffi Graf. This made Monica climb even higher on the ranking. But the teenager isn't done yet. She continued to be unstoppable on the court, and by 1991, she finally replaced Graf and became the #1 female tennis player worldwide. Before she turned 20, she already garnered 8 Grand Slams, reaching 33 out of 34 finals, with a 92.9% winning rate. Seles was at the height of her career, but little did she know that this moment will also be the cause of her major downfall. On April 30th, 1993, Seles was playing Bulgarian Magdalena Malieva in Hamburg in Germany. She was on her way to wrap up the match with a 4-3 on the second set. Another win for her, supposed to be, when the tragedy occurred. During their water break, as the 19-year-old leaned down to take a sip, she felt a sudden pang of pain on her back. It was a sharp object. Monica was clueless for a moment, sitting down with her shirt full of blood. The 6,000 fans watching were left horrified and shocked by what happened. The attack was made by Gunther Parch, an obsessed fan of the former world's #1 Steffi Graf. Using a 9-inch knife, he believed that injuring Seles will give a way for Graf to snatch the #1 spot again. It was reported that Parch was a loner who would often give letters and flowers to Graf out of obsession. Parch said that Graf is like a goddess sent for Germany. He was fortunately apprehended before launching another attack. Seles was rushed to the hospital where she was reported to have sustained a wound between her shoulder blades. Although it was centimeters away from paralyzing her, the stabbing caused Monica's career to spiral downward. The attack had brought her unbelievable traumas. The tennis player needed to spend 2 years outside of the court recovering. To make it worse, the day she was stabbed was also the day they received the news that her father had stomach cancer. Monica said that at that moment, She could only rely on her father, but seeing him with illness, the girl decided to not add to the burden. The young player suffered from PTSD, anxiety, depression, and eating disorders following the attack. She constantly had to deal with her weight gain and compulsive eating. She said in an interview, "I was on top of the world, then the next month in the hospital." She also lost her ranking after almost all of the players voted against the petition for Seles to retain her #1 spot while recovering. Although her #1 rival Graf visited her briefly at the hospital, it was more of a formality. It's like everyone was against the 19-year-old player. It was also worth mentioning that after she was stabbed, the game went as usual, as if nothing happened. But just like in court, Seles didn't let herself fall. She eventually became a U.S. citizen in 1995 and went back to playing in 1996. But it wasn't the same as it was. She constantly had to deal with body shaming and the traumas she still has within her. She was able to win the Australian Open in the same year, but that will be her last Grand Slam. She had a hard time processing her what-ifs. She could have been the best player at 22 years old, but instead, she spent these years recovering from her injuries. By the time she went back to court, she was called fat, terrible, and her father, her constant supporter and first coach, had died in 1998. It was in 2003 when an ankle injury foreshadowed her retirement. She continued to play at exhibition games and managed to win a few until she announced retirement in 2008. The Guardian journalist Tim Adams called Seles the greatest women tennis player to ever pick up the racket. Monica could have gotten way more Grand Slams and established records had she not been stabbed. It's unfortunate that her career took off when she was so young, but also ended when she was hardly 20. So what happened to her attacker? Well, not to disappoint y'all, but Parch was not tried for attempted murder, but only for harming Monica. It was because he confessed that he didn't want to kill Monica, but only to injure her. He only received 2 years suspended sentence because of his mental illness. Monica petitioned the ruling, but to no avail. According to her, it feels like she didn't receive the justice she deserved after this man destroyed everything she had. Monica never played in Germany following the attack since she felt discriminated against by the ruling. She also sued the German Tennis Federation for the failure of security, but lost as well. But how did Monica manage to get through all of this, to finally live her life outside the court and move on from the traumas of her childhood? It took her a lot of time to figure things out. She'll walk and contemplate her life, and there she'll find piece by piece all the answers. In 2009, she published her book, Getting a Grip, on my body, my mind, myself. Monica finally realized her purpose. In the same year, she started dating the businessman Tom Golisano and married him in 2014. Today, Monica Seles is happily living her life. Although her career was suddenly halted by an obsessed fan, her name will continue to go down in history as one of the best female tennis players the court had ever seen.